Street Smart Success, possibilities to prosperity. We are all about those possibilities and pathways and making this your way to prosperity. We have an exciting lineup for you tonight. My name is Sue Roscoff. I am part of the World of Ability Podcast Network, and it's my pleasure to bring in my better half over here. We've got Kurt Roscoff joining us. Kurt, how are you?
Doing good, doing real good. It's a fantastic, fun Friday. Always looking forward to these live at five sessions, live at five Pacific time, and a collaborative event here. I can share with you I am an ambassador as a Sue, and we have our super fan Emily Gulmer helping us here today as a podcast engineer. And so we're highlighting for Project iHeart, the community support program. Teamwork makes the dream work. I believe our colleague here, Robert Butwin, believes the same. And so we're here to tout that membership has its privileges, and we operate like Visa everywhere you want to be. And we have a shout out to Barry Shore, barryshore.com, and the Everywhere Card, theeverywherecard.com. And, we're on a crusade to help charities raise $1 billion at no cost to the givers. So we got all sorts of things here. So welcome to TV Land on the Mark TV, Easy Way TV, and we got Anthony Sardelli with Nonprofit TV, and with Project iHeart, these folks are helping us emerge PDH TV, and so I was on with Bravehearts TV today. We have Santa Papa John giving away cars and gas cards and all these things, through SLTV. So it's a very exciting time, folks, and a very exciting weekend. Happy Memorial Day weekend, everybody. We went to, pay homage to all those remembering this weekend and all of our fallen soldiers. And, so it's a good time to be a good citizen, a good patriot, and come on in here and take a look at, in the business realm. I like to, present myself as a specialist in affinity and cause marketing. So, what a cause for, our veterans all throughout the weekend, and, that affinity, the great success we commingle, with all of our warriors out there. And we were talking to a friend of ours today who we're doing an adaptive water skiing event on the morning of July 4th. So what a patriotic thing we're doing with the Pewauk Lake Water Ski Club west of Milwaukee. Lots of exciting things we had, lots of things to talk about. We got a crowd, coming into the Zoom session. If you did want to join this Zoom session as we're going here, just go ahead and join with meeting ID 404-058-6152. And with that, let's bring in Robert Butwin. This is a Street Smart Success production, Possibilities to Prosperity. So we're going to get into tips, tricks, techniques. This will be a little bit of an Ask Me Anything session for Robert. So, Robert, what are your initial nuggets? We've been really cranking away. We got a lot of these episodes in the can. So, what's the uniqueness today? What's the twist, the
Well,
turn, the wiggle, the wobble? What do you got?
first of all, for those of you that are listening and for the people that are here in the audience with us and that even might be joining us before we're done today. I want to sort of like recap and where everything started from and, where I'm at today. I take a look at and I started my journey in 1983, 84, right in that area. I don't remember exactly when, but it took me like 6 years before I was able to walk away from ever having to work a job again. September 7th, 1990. That's one day I'll always remember because, I was listening to a tape, and this is going to lead into the two guests that are in for different reasons for each one of them. But I was listening to a cassette tape at the time, and somebody said he painted this word picture. He said, think about what it would be like to be able to walk into your boss's office, sit across the desk from him, put your feet up on the desk, light a cigar, and tell him you can no longer afford to work there anymore. Well, that's the date it happened. I didn't necessarily light a cigar, but that was the last time I ever worked a job, but I take a look at what's going on today and why we, ultimately have it, because I look at there's so many different possibilities to create a prosperous life, whatever that might mean to each and every one of us. To me, prosperity is your health, your wealth, relationships, starting with your relationship with yourself and others, and whatever your spiritual belief is. So, but I take a look at what's going on today, and I believe it's easier to be successful today than any other time in history. Now, it comes with its own set of challenges. But part of why I wanted to, you know, help people shift their consciousness, become more, so to speak, enlightened, is because of the fact there's a lot of confusion going on in the world. And when I started, I remember, because I knew that I wanted to leave the job, and the job I was working was in our family business, and I knew that once I left, that that door would not reopen because of a variety of different reasons. So I had to make sure. And so one of the guests, which I will turn over in a few minutes, I was under a lot of stress because I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what my future was. And I remember I ultimately ended up reading one key book at the time, which was How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Well, the one guest that will be coming up very shortly, I think he's written 38 books about how to relieve, how to uh, eliminate stress, eliminate anger, amongst a lot of other things. He's an MD. And the other guest that's here right now with us is, one of my early mentors, and he's a common friend of both of us, is a gentleman by the name of Don Fala. Unfortunately, in his physical body, he's no longer here, but his work has carried on beyond him. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this program with, you, Sue, you, Kurt, and whoever wants to join us. So, because I was at an event one time, in a networking event, and a guy at the event said, "What's the meaning of life?" And the guy that there basically said to live a life of meaning. And that's, I want to get more clarity, because the more people that can see or have an understanding that whatever they want to accomplish, whatever they want to achieve. Because when I started my journey, and at the time I had just met a lady I was dating, now we've been happily married for 40 years, but we were walking, and I turned to her as we were walking in the park across from where she lived, and I said, "There's nothing or nobody that's going to stop me from succeeding." Now, I'm not going to tell you the path was easy, but what I can tell you is it was worth it. It's worth it once you break through, once you release the stress, once you have some kind of a systematic way. And so the first guest is, one of my initial mentors. He was also his mentor, which is Jack Welch. So Jack, I don't know if you'd like to um, ultimately unmute yourself and talk about what it is. You can talk about anything realistically that you want. I don't know if Kurt's got a specific question, but I know you've gone through the journey of life. You've had your challenges, and you're on the other side of the, so to speak, on the other side of that right now. But what does prosperity mean to you, and what wisdom and insight and perspective would you like to share with our listening audience?
Yeah, thanks here, Robert. Yeah, it's great to mention Don Failer. That's how you and I met years ago. And ironically, was invited to a networking event in Florida. This was before 9/11. I want to say 1998, 1999. Everybody's dressed. We got our dressed to the nines with our suits on, and there's a guy with a Hawaiian shirt with some lady standing next to him, and I see Don Failer, and he introduces himself to me, and I says, "You're not the Don Failer that wrote the book, are you?" He goes, "Yes, I am." So I never forgot that. So I learned a lot from him, and listen to your study, you, Robert, and everything like that. So it's been a long road at the beginning, but if you take a guy like a mentor like Don Failer, a lot of people should not take what he's taught lightly. You took it to the T, right? And
Yes.
studied what he actually has. It's not just another self-help book or anything like that. The man understands network marketing better than anybody else on the planet. So, it hadn't been easy, but I wanted to get out of corporate America, and I've had my ups and downs, and then finally, got there. So, uh, I thank Kurt for asking me to get on here. I didn't really know what this was about, but I wanted to join in, and see what was happening. But yeah, Don Failer was a unique guy, and that's all I did was copy what he did, pretty much, in my own personality. Tried to, anyways, And you may not know this, Robert. I was the guy that actually convinced Don at his resort to put a couple pickleball courts there. Have you been to his resort there in California?
No, I haven't, but I've got a pickleball court right outside my backyard. My wife and I normally play pickleball, so I'm definitely a big advocate of pickleball.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
as
yeah.
you can see Don's how he's wearing off of me. It might not be a Hawaiian shirt, but
Yeah.
it's in the same vein. I always wear these kind of shirts.
Yeah, yep, yeah. And he was himself. He was himself, right? And he branded himself with that shirt. But a lot of wisdom from him and you and other people that I've met through Don through the years. So if anybody can take anything away, it's just don't try to reinvent the wheel. Just copy the successful people in your own personality.
Definitely. One of the keys and part of how I met Don originally, he had what they call an unconvention. And as you said, he sort of just showed up. And, I went to an event, and part of the reason I'm saying that is because, the next speaker that want to bring up on stage, which just so happens we're going to be going to, or a meeting at an event coming up in the very well, actually, we've met before, but, there's still a power, even though a lot of what we both do is on Zooms, but there's still that power of meeting at that event, and it's going to be an amazing event in Ashland, Oregon. And for anybody that's listening, if they want to attend, I highly recommend it. There's only 2 events that I go to nowadays, and this is one of those 2, and it's the end of June. But I mentioned what the key when I started, because there's, as you're diving into this unknown water, there's this fear of what's the uncertainty, and especially today, especially with everything that's going on in the world today, there's a lot of reasons why people can have fear. There's a lot of reasons why people can have anger because of, and I don't want to get political, but you just take a look at all the things that are happening, and that could be a reason for some people, or quite a few people, to be angry at. But this guy is a master at helping people release anger once and for all. And he's become a very, very good friend. And we quite often hang out in the similar circles. So, Dr. Mort Orman, as far as whatever you would like to say, and then Kurt was probably, or if there's any questions you have for Kurt, myself, Sue, be it you or Jack, we're here. Go ahead, Dr. Mort.
Okay, thanks, Robert, for the introduction. And by the way, what's the time frame you want me to occupy?
Whatever you want. There's no time frame. You can speak as you know. Part of why we're doing this is to share our wisdom
Okay.
out into the ethers, and it's sort of like how I met my wife, the synchronicity, or how I changed my life by listening to a Wayne Dyer cassette tape series. We're going to market your wisdom, Jack's wisdom, my wisdom, Kurt's wisdom, and hopefully it will fall on the right ears, and we'll have some kind of an impact on whoever's listening.
All right. Well, just remember you asked for this when it's all said and done. So I just showed up here tonight. I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into. I was told it was a podcast, and I like podcasts and guesting on podcasts. Anyhow, so I didn't have anything prepared, but just in the few minutes I've been listening, I wanted to talk about possibility. I wanted to talk about prosperity. And the thing that I wanted to talk about, the theme for those 2 things, was to talk about their relationship to something, Robert, you probably haven't heard me talk about, being wrong. And my life story, and my life history has been a sort of a demonstration of the fact that the possibilities that I've stepped into in my life that I never believed I could step into uh, only came about because I was willing to finally admit that I was wrong, that I couldn't achieve those things, or I couldn't accomplish or do those things. So, for example, I talked to a lot of people today about being able to master their emotions and eliminate anger whenever they want. And the vast majority of people alive today do not believe that's possible. They will argue that it can't be done. Some will argue that it shouldn't be done, that anger is very important and we shouldn't eliminate anger. Well, I'm not talking about eliminating all anger usually. I'm usually talking about eliminating the destructive kind of anger that damages our health or our families, our kids, can get us into trouble. But even if you talk about that, people, well, you can't get rid of anger. It's just impossible. So they really have no space of possibility. So that means they're not even interested in listening to someone who's done it and taught other people to do it. They don't, to them, it's a meaningless discussion because there's no possibility in their being for having that happen. So, and if you'd come up to me in my 20s and 30s when I had a lot of anger and a lot of anxiety and all of my relationships were failing one after another with women, and if you ever said to me, do you ever think you'll see a day when you're not an angry person, when you don't have all this anxiety, where you finally, have a long-lasting relationship and a family? I would have said no. I saw no, I would have seen no possibility, given my track record and given the things that I tried to do to fix those problems back then, that all failed. And it was clear to me that it was not in the cards for me to ever be free of anger, anxiety, or relationship failures. And lo and behold, my wife and I are about to celebrate our 42nd wedding anniversary. I've had very little anger in my life over the last 40 years. I used to have a morbid fear of public speaking, which I no longer have. All of these things, I used to hate writing. I never saw myself as a writer or an author. And Robert has 26 books, but I've written 26 books. There's no way I could have done that without at some point realizing I was completely wrong about my possibilities in life in terms of becoming an author. Now, it's interesting because I'm a physician. And the last thing you want to hear from your physician is that they're interested in being wrong. You do not want to go to a physician who's committed to being wrong. Well, I'm not saying that, and when I had my physician hat on, I really was the opposite. I was very interested in being right and making sure I didn't screw anything up and make a wrong diagnosis or get a decimal point wrong on a prescription that would cause, somebody to get really damaged. So when you're practicing medicine or a lot of other fields, it's very important to be right. But when you're dealing with your emotions, when you're dealing with relationships, when you're dealing with any kind of a breakthrough in your life, at some point you've got to realize that you have one identity that you believe is true and fixed, and you've been living in it for years, and you got a lot of evidence that it's true and fixed, and it's not. You literally could create a whole bunch of other identities that you don't even know you have the potential for, but you're living in this space of limited possibility. And the only way to get out of that space is to go, like I did multiple times in my life, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? What could I become? What could I do? And I'll share two examples with you. I I would not have become a doctor if I hadn't gotten to the place where I one day decided that I was wrong, because I never wanted to be a doctor. I never grew up wanting to be a doctor. I hated everything about it. I didn't like being around medicine things, needles, shots, old people, sick people, nothing. Not one single thing was attractive to me about the profession of medicine. But my parents wanted me to be a doctor. And I liked biology. I liked sciences. So when I went to Duke University, I wanted to have the best science curriculum so that you sign up for pre-med. I figured, great, I'll get the best science courses. My parents will be happy, but there's no way am I going to be a doctor. So I went through that whole thing, and then I sort of fell in love with biochemistry, decided I want to be a biochemist. To make my parents happy, I applied to medical school just to shut them up, got accepted, but it was clear to me I was not going to medical school. That didn't want to have anything to do with it. So I go and schedule an appointment with the head of the biochemistry department at Duke for a position. I walk in, he doesn't know me from Adam. I sit down, I tell him the same story I just told you, that I want to be a biochemist. To make my parents happy, I applied to medical school, but I don't want to go. I want to come here and be. He listened to me for 5 minutes, and when it was his turn to talk, he leaned forward and he looked me right in the eye and he said, "Are you some kind of an idiot?" Which was not the response that I expected. He proceeded to say, "Don't you know that if you want to be a biochemist, you'll have a much better life with an MD degree than with a PhD degree like I have? Where I have to fight for grants, every single day. You'd have, the world at your, beckoning with an MD degree." I didn't know that. And then he said, "Don't you know a lot of people go to medical school every year with never the intention to become a practicing physician?" I said, "I didn't know that either. I thought that's the only reason you go to medical school is become a practicing doctor." So with a 15-minute conversation, and by the way, and then he said, "What's the worst that can happen? You go to medical school, and if you hate it after the first year, come back here. I'll give you a position." So he took all of my arguments that I had been convincing myself for I don't know how long. No, I will never go to. I don't want to be a doctor. I will never go to medical school. Da, da, da. He took it all away in 15 minutes because I was willing to admit I'm wrong. I don't know. I didn't know about the profession of biochemistry, what the difference between a PhD and an MD degree. I didn't know that you can go to medical school without the intention to be a doctor. I didn't know any of that stuff. And he straightened me out in 15 minutes, changed my life. And I've had a 50-year crew. I went to medical school, fell in love with becoming a practicing physician to my surprise, have had a great and wonderful career and enjoyed just about every minute of it. And never would have happened if I hadn't been willing to be wrong. Here's another example. So I had this, you talk about a love-hate relationship. It was really a hate-hate relationship with running. I was athletic. I played sports. I was actually fast. Um, but if you asked me to run for exercise or punishment or do laps oh, it's torture, absolute physical and mental torture. I used to think people who ran marathons belonged in mental institutions. There had to be something really seriously wrong with them because I knew how bad it felt to go run a mile. And every once in a while, I would go out to a high school track and I would force myself to run a mile to try to get in shape, and it would be horrible. And the next day I'd feel terrible, and the next day I'd feel. After about 3 days, it's like I quit. I'm not a runner. It's very clear. That's not who I am. It's a horrible experience. And one day, one to talk about possibility. One day I was sitting in a relationship seminar in a personal development course. They weren't talking about anything related to running or exercise. And 100 people in a room with a trainer up front. And my mind just started to wander from the subject they were talking about. And I heard this little voice in my head go, "You can't run a marathon." It's like, what's that all about? Where'd that come from? And why would I try to convince I don't want to run. I know I can't run a marathon. Where did that come from? And again, I was doing this personal development work, so we were talking about possibilities, and we all have these possibilities within us, and we don't know that we have. And I've been immersed in that sort of for a while, and is it trying to convince me I can't run a marathon because I can? That's crazy. That's crazy talk. But I got very suspicious. I went, why on earth would it do that? What if there's a natural runner inside of me that I don't know is there that could enjoy running? And I have no idea if that's true or not. In other words, what if I've been wrong all these years about me and running? What if instead of blaming running as being a horrible activity, what if it's the way I approach running that's turning it into a horrible activity? What if that's true? And I've been wrong all these years in blaming running for the problem when it's really me all along. Well, I didn't have any idea what was true, what was not true. All I knew is I was damn curious at that point. So guess what I decided to do that day? I decided to make the craziest decision I ever made in my life. I decided I was going to sign up the next day to run the Baltimore Marathon 5 months down the road. And I was going to try to use it as as a laboratory to figure out if this personal development shit worked or not. Because I was pretty sure, because I've been doing all this work and I had nothing had changed in my life. And I was pretty sure it was all bogus. So I'm going to create an experiment to prove that personal development doesn't work because I'm going to try and do this transformation about running and it's going to fail and I'm going to prove it. Accidentally, I set it up brilliantly and it worked to my surprise. It actually turned out that the possibility that I had just had a glimmer of, that I just imagined maybe possibly could be true, turned out to be true. Because I discovered through this process that I could enjoy running, that it really wasn't running's fault. I had all these cockamamie ideas about running that I ran from, and the no pain, no gain philosophy that my parents gave me, that's all bullshit. You don't have to have that, to run and to train. So that's the first thing I got rid of. I said, I'm getting rid of the no pain, no gain. It's going to be no pain whatsoever. That was the first thing I did. It was brilliant because it kept me in the game. And then I discovered all these other things ideas that I had about running that would affect my running. If you're running and you see a big hill down the road and you start to lean forward in anticipation of having to struggle up that hill, you're now less biomechanically efficient than when you were sort of back in a sort of an upright position. And I started to notice these things as I was out on the road because I didn't have to quit anymore because I wasn't experiencing pain. The long and short of it is at the end of the 5 month period, I ran my first marathon in 3 hours, 48 minutes. I enjoyed the process the entire way. I enjoyed the training the entire way. I even had a party that night after the marathon. I had a party that went on and we were dancing until midnight. It was incredible. Okay. This whole idea I had about running, how hard it was, how painful it was, how it's not a normal natural activity, how I couldn't enjoy it. I was wrong on every score. And the possibility of enjoying, and by the way, I went on to run for 20, from that point, I ran 25 consecutive years, 2,000 miles a year, ran 5 more marathons, 2 Boston marathons. I became a lover of running. That's possibility turning into reality. And it all came from, could I be wrong?
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. Those are just two of the breakthroughs I've had in my life, two of the major breakthroughs. I've had a major breakthrough as I told you, in my relationship, where I finally figured out how relationships work and how not to screw them up. I had a major breakthrough in my ability to deal with stress in general. I had a major breakthrough in my ability to deal with anger and anxiety in general. Every single one of those breakthroughs came from, what if I'm wrong about relationships and how they work? What if I'm wrong about stress, what it is, where it comes from, how to deal with it? Is stress management the answer? No, it's not. Stress mastery is the answer. What if I'm wrong about anger, where anger comes from? What's the best way to deal with anger? Is it anger management? No, it's anger elimination. What's the best way to deal with anxiety? What causes anxiety? What causes public speaking fear? Is it speaking in public? No. It's what your brain does to you about thinking about speaking in public is what causes public speaking anxiety. And once you figure out how your brain is lying to you about what public speaking is really all about and what the truths are about, and falsehoods are about it, then you realize, oh my God, I can do this without all that crap, and it's really not that bad. And then it gets to be fun. It gets to be enjoyable. So every single one of those life-changing breakthroughs, that once they happened, I never went back to the old way. It was a permanent alteration in my being and my possibility in life that I didn't even know I could produce. And it all came from, what if I'm wrong? So what I do today around anger and stress is I show people where they're wrong about what we've all been taught to understand about anger and stress. It's completely wrong what we've been taught. And there are very few experts who are willing to stand up and say, everything that I built my whole reputation on and that I teach, and the ways I try to help people, sincerely try to help people, it's all BS. And nobody's ever informed me about what's really true. That's what I do. I just run around sprinkling fairy dust, sprinkling possibility where people had no possibility before, because they're in a mindset that's doesn't have the possibility of freedom, doesn't have the possibility of living a stress-free life, doesn't have the possibility of leading an anger-free life. So, Robert, you asked for
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Well, I know that we're going to turn it off, but I want to make a comment or two, and then Kirk can make a comment, and then he can call up a couple of the other guests because there's a couple other guests up in the waiting room. But the key is you challenge your belief, and I take a look at right in the word belief is the word lie, and I was thinking about the same thing. I remember, back, I had just got done running a nightclub, and I was wondering who would ever need to resort to. This was before there was online dating. Putting an ad in the personals. And for those of you that haven't heard that story, that's how I actually met the lady that I'm still hanging out with 40 years later. So, but again, it's challenging beliefs. So, Kurt, do you have some questions you want to bring up one of our other guests? I think, see somebody's raising their hand. I know Dr. Harvey normally's got a very short period of time here, and I see one of our sponsors, Mark Beelan's here. So, Kurt, turn it over to you.
All right, very good. Yeah, what an abundance of responses we got tonight. So yeah, Jim, you've been patiently awaiting here. Your hand is up. What's percolating for you? What do you bring to us, Jim Bannon? What say you, sir?
Well, Dr. Mort, it's a pleasure to meet you and listen to you. Hello, Robert. Hello, Mark. I still love you. But the part you kept repeating is, what if I'm wrong? Of course, the guy in the lower left-hand corner of the screen tells me that I'm wrong very frequently. Don't you, Doctor? Dr. Harvey's on my board. But my daughter is 48 years old. I never brag about me, but I brag about her. She came to Phoenix, and we have a Thanksgiving Day race, and there were like 5,000 runners. She's 48 years old. She was 46 at the time. She came in third. The girl who won is a Nike professional and an 8-time Olympian. And then she got hurt, so she couldn't run. She read 74 books. And last Thanksgiving, my baby, who now has a driver's license, ran the race. So I know what you're talking about, and God bless. When I heard she did an Ironman, I said, on purpose?
Here we go. All right. Well, Dr.
you know,
Harvey, let's bring
more
in
after listening to that, and I commend you on that. I would probably sit back and say, the Lord works in mysterious ways. That's what I would say. Or I would have said that, or I would say, well, you listen to the universe. But what happened, what you did is you stopped the process. You interrupted it. And that's the key. And that's the key to change. That's all. I don't have anything else to say.
There you go. Let's bring in the guy that
Jim, how many daughters do you have?
I have one that's buried overlooking Pikes Peak for all eternity, and you know that story. And I have the other one who unfortunately is not talking to her dad right now.
Okay.
So I would say I have 0.
Okay.
Okay. Well, there you
I
go.
just wanted to make sure there were 2.
Yes. So, all right. Well, let's bring in the guy who, for Project iHeart, he created a program where now we can tell you all that the Lord is on our board, right, Mark Balin? Come on in.
Well, first and foremost, I want to welcome Kurt's mustache to the meeting because that takes precedence. Okay, and amazing the fact that Sue has put up with it for this long. Seriously, I can see the red colors around. It's Jack Welch, I want to thank you for being resurrected. I thought you were the chairman of the board of GE, and I'm surprised this year. Jim Bannon talks about you all the time, and I thought you passed away, but God bless your resurrection. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that Jim Bannon swears to God you're still alive. So it's the first time he didn't lie. So congratulations. Yes, I mean, seriously. So, I know most of these people in the room. Robert Butwin is my mentor and friend. Kurt is my bright light that brings me a lot of great people like this room has. And all I can tell you is if you want more visibility, if you want to amplify yourself, if you want more people to know who you are and what you do, and not just in these rooms, Kurt's rooms, but beyond, I own On the Mark, MARC TV, and it's, 500 million viewers, and it's very popular to say the least. And I got 8 Roku channels. So, if you guys want to, have more people see and hear you, I'm your guy.
There you go. You are a guy, Mark. Thank you. So we have a guest here that connected on a Samsung SM S146VL. Who is on a Samsung? Come in and say hello. If you can unmute, who's our guest? Chiming in. We got Dina's was busy with something. Might come back here in 10 minutes. We'll see. Samsung. All right, we're not getting anybody there. So for me, folks, in this realm of possibilities to prosperity, in the journey that Sue and I have had, we tell repetitively our story in adaptive water skiing, more than sextupling the access to the sport of water skiing in 6 years, an inspiration that got me to the point where I say people with disabilities are the masters of ability. And through this journey, that's where I got involved in the veteran services because I went to an adaptive ski clinic where our injured, wounded veterans were water skiing. And so, like I announced at the beginning here, we're going to be doing another veteran skiing program with adaptive water skiing for disabled American veterans through DAV, the organization. And so a lot of exciting things manifested because one day Sue and I sent the gentleman home in our community who ended up not skiing, and Sue and I full well intended that our community member who had become a friend of ours would get out there and water ski. It didn't happen. We turned it around. So an experience with the Wisconsin Water Ski Federation that truly did turn possibilities into prosperity. So, Robert, what are you thinking right now at this point? We got quite a crew here. We got our sponsor on here.
There's
Kurt,
somebody else that just joined. A couple other people just
Bo
joined.
just joined us, Kurt. That's what I was going to bring up.
All right, do it away, Emily. Take it away.
Well, now she went off camera, so I can't. Well, there we go.
So, Bo, would you like to join the discussion? We're in a program called Possibilities to Prosperity, a program by Street Smart Success, sponsored by On the Mark TV. We got Jim Bannon, Jack Welch, our feature presenter and master of wisdom, Robert Butwin. You can't help but win with Robert Butwin. And my wife Sue here is co-hosting. We have Dr. Mort Orman here and Dr. Harvey Loomstein. We got quite a crew, Bo. What do you think?
It's wild. Even the shopping carts are jumping up and down at the market. Yeah.
I told you it's quite a weekend, folks. Happy Memorial Day weekend. So Bo, anything more you want to share in terms about what this weekend means to you and what your plans are and what you hope to accomplish for yourself on a holiday?
Well, tomorrow I'm going to go down and play Scottish music at the Scottish Fest, which is in Costa Mesa. So tonight we'll be costuming now and prepping a book for the music we're going to play. Going to have that and registering for the 50th anniversary of Business Owners Debtors Anonymous and for the tickets, because we all get in by tickets, because we all go down, set up a tent. We have food, snacks for people. We put our instruments in the shade, and then we wait to perform. This is a lot of fun. We rehearse first. And Sunday is choir, and then I'm taking care of a 90-year-old. So it's busy, busy, busy.
I would say
one more thing, I'm working with people in Kenya. And so they're never going to be less surprises, because there's a conference in June about transforming education. And I'm going to be studying a certain tree that might change the world so that there's money for things. So There you go.
Is
Wow,
that
we're
one
going to
of,
reach a day where money grows on trees. What do you think about that, Robert?
I think it might be.
yeah, I was going to ask, is that one of those money trees? So things I'm talking about what Dr. Mort was saying, about being wrong. My parents always told me that money doesn't grow on trees. Maybe they're wrong.
I think it depends upon your point of view.
I
There you
see Jim's
go.
got a question or comment.
Yeah, Jim Bannon, you raised your hand. What's percolating? What's on your mind? What's coming across your tongue, Jim Bannon?
Hey, Bo, I love doing things for free, and I love Africa, and I love education. And last night I went to Legislative District 10. There were about 100 people there. I got somebody to lend me the money so I could drive down. I needed gas. And I ran into the person I've been tracking down for 4 years, and that is Save Our Schools. So I lost my marriage of 44 years because I committed to the governor that we're going to take this state of Arizona from the worst in the country and make them number one. So if you want to reach out to me as a free resource, I'd be glad to help you in your mission.
Sure, Jim, I'd love to. What I found out this week, which is not odd, but it just is hard to receive, is that there were all these people at a major HMO that are in customer service, and they're not educated enough to say, I don't know the answer to that. Instead, they got really rude when I didn't feel well. And it was about a couple words, but they don't know how to look up. So you couldn't be talking more to the choir because I went and talked to my doctor separately about it. And we were talking about how few people have direct relationship with doctors. They have relationships with teams, which include these people who don't answer your questions and won't look up to see if the cocktail they want to inject into you is correct for your body. And these are normal questions. They're part of the patient's Bill of Rights. And if I'm talking to the disability community, this is not an oddity, but becoming very common. But it was the ego that wasn't involved in being dedicated. It was about, now we'll get her off the phone because I don't know how to answer these questions. And we'll make her wrong for saying her dad was a surgeon and that there's a reason I'm asking. And so I think between writing an appeal this week for access for other people as well as for myself, I really am grateful. I had a really good education. So we're on track, Jim. I'll get your number from Kurt and we'll talk. Thank you. It's the only thing we could do for people that they can become capable and independent. They've got to start somewhere and say help, and they've got to know how to say, here's what's happening. Yeah, we're aligned. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Jim.
You're absolutely welcome. Yeah, thanks for joining the conversation. And, Robert, I really got to hand it to you. You're a gentleman that practices what I had presented to me 20 years ago. A gentleman in Waukesha County, Wisconsin, west of Milwaukee, did a presentation on the art of allowing. And Robert, I think we're hearing this nice little Brady Bunch conversation here because, you kind of got a little, probing and prodding from Mark Balin and, the prompting from your conversation brought you over to Sue and me and Emily and, got us opening up this possibilities to prosperity conversation and, kind of bringing in the wisdom of your street smart success. And I'd say it's because you practice the art of allowing. Do you identify with that, Robert?
I totally do. Sometimes you just got to stay open to what, in knowing who you are. And obviously, you want to be grounded and not angry or resentful. One of the things I learned early on is there's certain lessons we're supposed to learn. Until you learn those lessons, life will continually trip you up in that lesson. So, but staying open, it's like I was open because I started with the question I mentioned about how I met my wife, but the key about allowing, no matter what it is, and part of it is having that vision, whatever the vision is, that there is something more out there that you can create. I sort of like one of my favorite movies is A Knight's Tale. And why, one of the reasons why it's one of my favorite is the guy's father, the guy that wanted to be a knight. You know, he was under the belief that he had to, or his father was under the belief that you had to be born into nobility. But he believed he could be a knight, even though it was a fiction, you know, um, movie, that he could be a knight, and it's what he did to become a knight. And so, you know, as far as allowing, it's just allowing yourself to accomplish what you really want to accomplish, whatever that might be. And I see there's another person that just joined us from up, that's in the gallery. If she wants, if you want to bring her down.
Oh my gosh. Well, we don't want to bring her down. We want to lift her up, and we want to give Dina
Yeah.
accolades and praise. She saved the day for us when we had some rugby to attend to and so forth. Dina said, "Don't worry, we'll get the group organized." And she attracted a Brady Bunch group through a podcast. And Robert, that was a 2-hour podcast we do on Saturdays. We'll be doing it again tomorrow. Dina, we got so many compliments from your show. Thank you so much for doing it.
You are very welcome. My goodness. Thank you. Thank you. It was really a lot of fun. I had a great time, and I didn't realize I could talk for 2 hours. My goodness.
Well done.
And Robert, really good to see you. I know we swirl around here and there and we run into each other. So really good to see you again.
Yes.
And I just hopped on. I looked out on my phone and I had a notice. I was like, oh my goodness. And we just came in from swimming. So for those of you that are in Phoenix, you guys know how hot it is here, right? So yeah, we just came in from swimming. So I had to go put a t-shirt on or something. But the conversation is really going amazing. Dr. Mort, asking yourself those questions, what if I was wrong? I love that, because to me, that just opens a whole new venue in your mind, of course, of what if I did this? What if I tried this? What if I didn't say this? Yeah, I love the way that you presented that. That was just awesome. Robert, you always just blow my mind with things you have to say and throw in there. The other guest on, I'm still learning them. I've seen them on here before, but I'm not just getting to know them. The conversation I love. My big thing is, of course, awareness, recovery. I'm a recovered addict of over 30 years. And Dr. Mort, if I wouldn't have asked myself, what if I was wrong? Then I would have never gotten my answers. And one of the biggest questions I could have asked myself is, why am I being so complacent? Why am I not doing something? What if me doing this was wrong and I should be doing this? And it is amazing how many different answers you can come up with. And then you just take the ones that actually make sense and you work through those. And then from there, you start tracing. For me personally, I had to trace and be aware of my triggers and my responses and why I do the things I do. And that is what got me clean and sober years ago. So I just love where this conversation is going. This is good stuff, y'all. Really good stuff. So thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for coming aboard.
And you have to have enough awareness to be able to give yourself permission to ask those questions.
You are not wrong. That's exactly right. You do have to do that. And a lot of times when you give yourself permission, when I started learning to give myself permission, I still felt guilty, because with that permission, I had to set up boundaries for toxic people or relationships that were very comfortable. And that's what really blew my mind was, oh my gosh, we're talking very close family members, mothers, sisters, right there. It's like you have to put those boundaries up, and you have to give yourself permission to do that with the understanding you're doing it for a good cause, for a good reason. And if you ask yourself, why are you doing this? Or am I wrong doing this? I found out the true answer is no, I wasn't wrong doing that. and it made our family a better family for that. So even though you doubt yourself, I like that, Dr. Harvey, giving yourself permission or asking permission, because the guilt that goes with it.
You don't ask. You give.
You just give. You just give
You
yourself
don't ask.
permission. I like that
You don't
even
ask.
better. You just do it.
Right.
I do like that.
All right. So Robert Butwin, we tend to give you back to your bride by 6 Pacific time. Are you gonna stay and spill over the hour, or are you gonna leave us?
No,
and
I
we'll
can tell you.
finish
Well,
up?
first of all, Jim's got his hand up again, and it's number one. No, I've got a few more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Jim,
Yeah.
take it away. What are you bringing this time?
Well, I want to make sure that Robert gets any thoughts out, because I'm going to stay, and I have a response to Dina. But go ahead, Robert. Understanding that you are making the right decision to be with your bride, what words of wisdom can you depart with?
What words of wisdom? Possibilities. Again, I said it earlier. I believe, number one, no matter what it is that you want to accomplish, create, do, that there's a variety of different possibilities out there. You just got to do, going back to what Nike said, just do it. You've got to figure out, understand what your intention is, know who you are, understand your values, and go out and make a difference. We all have two B days, a birthday and a box day, and in between there's a dash. The question you want to continually ask yourself: are you living a life on purpose with a meaning? How can I make a difference? There's an old parable about the starfish thrower. As the guy throws the starfish, the next one in, I made a difference. If you consistently focus on being of value, because there's a lot of people out there that are hurting. There's a lot of people out there are suffering for whatever reasons. And there's no need to. With everything going on today, it's like you want to stay on purpose with intention and make a difference. I guess, that would be how I'd leave it. And so I very much appreciate those of that show up. We want to continually grow this. We want to obviously share the insights and wisdom that that we share with other people. And I appreciate you realizing that my wife, because I've been on Zoom since 7 this morning, nonstop, 6 days a week, virtually, almost. So she does like spending time with me. So I appreciate being here.
Thanks, Robert.
Yeah,
See you later.
Always
thanks,
appreciate
Robert.
you.
Okay. Take care, everybody.
Yep. Have a good one.
Bye-bye,
So,
Robert. Right
Bye.
decision.
Yep.
Bye, Robert. Have a good weekend.
keeping the boss happy. That's the way we roll. All right, folks. So don't forget, we're here with Possibilities to Prosperity every second and fourth Friday of every month at the Live at 5 Pacific time slot with Robert Butwin and gathering with crews like this. So each and every one of you are welcome back for that second Friday in July. And so that will be, I got to look at my day planner to get the date, the 10th. So it'll be 7/10/26. So on that date,
Kurt, isn't it June?
oh, that's right. I'm jumping into July. Good catch. All right. So put that on your planner for July 10th. But Emily's point, she doesn't want you to miss June 12th. June 12th. There we go. I'm getting a little ahead of myself there. So I got the month of June to perform for you guys yet before I get to July. So here we go. And again, live at 5 Pacific time. So yeah, great accolades for our sponsor with On the Mark TV. And we had the man himself, Mark Balin, come on here. Thank you, sir, for that. So Sue, we're going to give you the last word, and then you can coordinate with Emily to shut down our production here. Take it away, Sue.
Excellent. Well, and you had started out with that quote from Michael Hummel, to be seen, heard, felt, and understood. And I think this is an amazing group to basically speak to exactly that. Such great things shared here tonight. I am so grateful for your time and the gift of what you've given here tonight with the words you've all shared. So for all of us here with the World of Ability Podcast Network and with Street Smart Success, Possibilities to Prosperity with Robert Butwin, as always,